One of the craziest college football and draft stories over the last decade is from a guy named Jachai Polite. At one point, he was seen as a generational pass rusher for Florida, a guy who was a lock to go in the first round, and someone who could terrorize NFL offensive lines for years to come. The guy was an athletic freak and was naturally gifted at getting to the quarterback. Unfortunately, after a star-studded career at Florida, his draft stock would completely fall apart. He went from that first-round lock to the third round, was fined over $100,000, and was eventually cut before he ever played a game. How on earth did this happen? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about the insane story of Jachai Polite, how he went from an underrated recruit to a potential generational pass rusher, and then how he potentially threw it all away. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover in my next one. Now, let's get started. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to Grind to Shine 386 for recommending today's video. If you have a prospect, player, or topic you want me to cover next, be sure to let me know down below and you could get a shout out in my next video. Going back in time, Jachai Polite was born in Daytona Beach, Florida. He made it clear from an early age that he wanted to make a better life for the person who raised him, his mom. He said, quote, "My mom, she believed in me since I came out of her. I just don't want her to do anything and I'll take care of her." So from an early age, he was motivated to make it out and had someone else he was working for. Polite quickly became one of the best athletes in his area and would eventually arrive at Mainland High School with a lot of hype and a lot of untapped potential. Coaches often say that in order to win a football game, a team has to win in three aspects of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. It's pretty cliche, but having Jachai Polite on a team will greatly increase your chances of winning because he does all three. He played tight end on offense, was an edge rusher and linebacker on defense, and even played punter on special teams. He was pretty much impossible to block and was a mismatch in every way. It led to some pretty crazy numbers over his final 2 years, as eventually he collected 132 total tackles, 49 TFLs, and 23 total sacks. The guy was a monster on the football field and literally did everything. He snatched red zone touchdowns as a tight end, boomed 40-plus yard punts on special teams, and during one game in 2015, he had a punt down inside the 5-yard line and then strip sacked the quarterback on the ensuing drive. The guy was a game changer. Their head coach Scott Wilson said Polite even saw snaps at quarterback, wide receiver, corner, linebacker, and safety during his varsity career. In addition to his versatility, his dedication was a huge reason for his success. He said, quote, "He's one of the kids you can count on because of how much he loves the sport. He doesn't miss a day, he doesn't miss a minute, and he doesn't miss a rep. He is so vital to any group he's ever been a part of because his accountability is unmatched." It's no wonder why every major college in the country made him an offer. But a reasonable question was, where would he go and how would that team plan to use him? Well, he was a 3-star recruit and eventually decided to commit in November of his senior year to Florida over USC, Missouri, and Georgia Tech. He was expected to potentially contribute in a few years and be a quicker than normal defensive tackle, but definitely not someone who would set up camp in an opponent's backfield. He ended up doing that. He really wanted a Florida State offer, but it never seemed to come to fruition despite all the national recruiting hype. Where would he end up going? Well, as I said, he chose Florida over offers from nearly 24 programs, including Auburn, Miami, and Tennessee as well. Mainland's defensive coordinator said, quote, "Jachai is a unique type of football player. There's nothing he can't do." He was a solid commit to Florida for a while, but after missing out on a few guys, USC came calling and tried to get him to flip. After making a visit to Los Angeles in January, he was put on flip watch to USC on signing day, but he decided to stick with the original plan and go to the Gators. According to 24/7 Sports, Polite was the 3-star recruit, the number 33 strong side defensive end, and the 740th best player in the class of 2016. So, how would Jachai end up doing in the swamp? Let's take a look. Well, when he arrived, his body had seen quite a transformation. He ended up being 275 pounds when he got to Gainesville, but would later on get to 245. At first, he was by no means a superstar. In 2016, he played in 12 games for the Gators, totaling 11 tackles, 3.5 TFLs, 2 sacks, 1 quarterback hurry, and 1 forced fumble. 2017 would be a much better season for Polite as he played in 7 total games and recorded 4 starts. He finished with 22 tackles, 5.5 TFLs, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 6 quarterback hurries. Unfortunately, his season would come to an end early, as against Georgia, he would suffer an injury that would take him out for the remainder of the year. Through his first 2 seasons, Polite was great, but 2018 is when he became a superstar. Midway through the season, Polite had exploded and had become one of the best pass rushers in America, if not the best. Linebacker David Reese said, quote, "Jachai's speed off the ball is probably the best in the country. He's probably hands down the best pass rusher in the nation, and I love playing with him. 1 week after being named the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week, he recorded a fumble, 2 sacks, 6 tackles, and a pass breakup. He also became the only player in the country to force 4 fumbles through the season's first 6 games. At this point, he was on top of the world and was on pace to become the first Florida player to record double-digit sacks since Derek Harvey did in 2006. According to Dan Mullen, Dwight Freeney became the one player he coached that would even come close to Jachai's explosiveness. That is quite the comparison. He finished the 2018 season with 17.5 TFLs and 11 sacks. Both of these were team highs for the Gators, and he led all of college football with 6 forced fumbles. He ended up playing 3 years at Florida, recording 78 tackles, 15 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, and 4 pass knockdowns. He was seen as a future superstar with natural talent, and one Packers scout said, quote, "It's impossible to watch Florida edge rusher Jachai Polite and not see similarities to Clay Matthews, Packers' all-time leading sacker." This is sadly where the downfall begins. He declared for the 2019 NFL Draft, and everything would go south at the NFL Combine. He had really poor testing, which included a 4.84 40-yard dash. From there, his first-round aspirations were down the drain because he was very slow for his position. Off the field, things would get bad too, as apparently Polite was acting like a crybaby, as he said teams were bashing him during interviews and brought up things he did wrong during his college career and bad performances he had. This was not a good look for him, and he said he got rattled because he wasn't ready mentally. He said, quote, "It's been pretty tough, but it's a major learning experience for me and something I've never been through in my life." He attempted to bulk up for the NFL, and while at the Combine, he weighed 258 pounds, but appeared very out of shape. His 4.48 40 time, as I said, was the second slowest among all edge rushers at the Combine, and his 32-inch vertical was the 4th worst. There were many reasons why he had a free fall before the draft, but it only got worse. He even told reporters, quote, "I never really even watched myself on film." What was the official scout take after this? One said, quote, "When the NFL starts digging into his background, they discovered concerning signs." 2 scouts representing 2 different teams said they came away with questions about his work ethic, commitment, and attention to detail. One scout described him as bad news, arrogant, and not a team player. The other called him a talented pass rusher and lived off that and fell for a reason. He had no arrest, but just a troubling pattern of behavior. He'd end up still getting drafted, and while it wasn't in the first round, the Jets took a chance on him and took him with the 68th overall pick in the 3rd round of the 2019 draft. But that was not the end of his trouble. Polite was definitely a first-round talent, and that's why they were willing to take a risk on him in the 3rd round. His talent was always there, but he never shaped up after the pre-draft process. It was clear that he was struggling on the field during training camp and in the preseason, and he got mainly 3rd-team reps early in camp and then worked with the 2nd team later. He apparently had very little impact in practice or even in the game. According to Pro Football Talk and the New York Post, it would reach a breaking point as he accumulated more than $100,000 in fines for violating team rules and for being late to meetings. This was approximately 10% of his $1.1 million signing bonus, and all of that was spent on fines. That absolutely sucks. He went from a surefire first-round pick to draft fall, to 3rd round pick, and then to cut. He was released by the New York Jets before he even played a game, and then signed with the Seahawks practice squad. One article said, quote, "This is the NFL, which stands for not for long." Jachai Polite had been running primarily with the 3rd team in training camp, which is usually reserved for guys on the very fringe of the 90-man roster. If you stay there, you probably will not make the team. So after the Jets, he went to the Seahawks practice squad, but was released on September 23rd of 2019. A few days later, he was signed to the LA Rams practice squad, and then actually got a chance. In Week 5 of the 2020 season, he recorded his first career sack against Alex Smith, but was waived in early December of 2020. He went back and forth between the practice squad and the team, and was eventually released in January. Flash forward to 2022, he signed with Toronto of the CFL, and was eventually released after 3 games, contributing 1 tackle on both special teams and on defense. A couple days later, he then went to the Edmonton Elks, but then was released by them 1 month later. So right now I don't really know what he is up to, but he is not in the NFL. The guy went from a surefire 1st round pick, saw a meteoric pre-draft slide, and then got cut before the season even started. It's one of the crazier stories over the last few years, and I really feel bad for him. I definitely hope he learned from all this, I hope other athletes learn from it, and I hope he becomes very successful in life. He was definitely a star for Florida, and maybe one day he'll get another chance, but for now, it's probably not likely. But what do you guys think? If you're a Florida or a Jets fan, what do you think of Jachai Polite? Who's another guy who had a crazy stock fall? And what other football topic do you want to hear me cover? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.